In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make progress bars in UEFN completely using Verse. You can use this for lots of things like rig systems, computer loading mechanics, or even crafting mechanics. Before I get into the tutorial, I first want to take a moment to talk to you about Map Academy. It's a service I created for both new and experienced UEFN developers that makes creating maps easy. You get access to lots of super useful scripts that would otherwise cost lots of money to get made individually. And that's not even mentioning all of the other amazing features it includes. So whether you're a beginner who wants to jumpstart your game dev career, or you're an experienced developer who just wants to save time and money, check out Map Academy in the description below. So to get started, the first thing we need to do is add a new Verse file. So I'm going to go to Verse Explorer and hit Add New Verse File. I'm going to call this Progress Bar and hit Create. Now I'm going to open this up, and in this I'm going to first make our basic editable, which is going to be a button that's going to add the UI to the player. So I'm going to call this a just button of type button device. Now for this button, we're going to say button.interacted with event.subscribe open UI. So this will activate whenever the button is interacted with. And then we need to make this function called open UI, which is going to take an agent, because whenever you get this event here, it listens for an agent. So we'll receive an agent here. And for now, we're just going to say block because we need to actually create the UI first before we can add it. So let's go ahead and create a new class for our UI. So we're going to call this progress bar UI, and it's a class just like that. And so in this, we need to put all of our elements for our UI. So what we're going to need is a background bar. So I'm going to say var background bar, and I'm just going to make it a color block. You can make it a texture as well, so you can import your own image on it. But for now, I'm just going to make it color block, and I'm going to say the default color is going to be black. It needs to be capitalized. And then here we're missing temporary UI. Add that, and then we also need to use named colors. All right. We also need the actual progress bar. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to just copy exactly how we did the background bar. We're getting an error here because this is the same name as our created device. So I'm just going to call this width for widget. And then I'm going to change the color to red instead. There's one more widget we need, which is going to be the canvas that both of these color blocks are going to be put onto. So we will call this a progress canvas. It's going to be of type canvas. And now we need to make a function that's going to add this UI to the player. So we'll call it initialize. It's going to take an agent, and it's going to return nothing. Under this, we will say set progress canvas equal to make UI. So this function will set our progress bar canvas to a new UI that we're going to create. So we're going to now make this function, and it's going to return a canvas. And under this, we're going to create a new canvas. So we're going to say new canvas of type canvas is equal to canvas. So we'll create a new canvas, and it's of type canvas. And then this is what it's going to actually be set to. We need to first create some canvas slots by saying slots, which is equal to an array. And then we need to add the array of canvas slots. So our first slot, we write like this, canvas slot. And then we need a few values. The first is going to be the anchors. But to know what to put here, I'm actually going to create a widget blueprint in my content folder. So you go to user interface and click widget blueprint, then user widget. I'm just going to call this test progress bar and open this up. This is just going to be used to replicate what we'll make in Verse so that we know what the values need to be. So in this blueprint, I'm going to drag a canvas panel on, and then I'm going to drag our first image, which we'll make is our background bar. So I'm going to position this where I want it. So I'll just put it right here. I'm going to change the anchors as close as possible. And I'm also going to change the alignment to 0.5, 0.5, and then move this back. So now that we have where our background bar is going to be, I can reopen my Verse and import these values. So our anchor, because it's center, is going to be 0.5, 0.5. So if I go back to our Verse, we'll say is equal to anchors where our minimum is equal to a vector 2, x is equal to 0.5, y is equal to 0.5, and then our maximum is also equal to a vector 2, where the x and the y are equal to the same thing. Now we can move on to our offsets. So if we write offsets is equal to a margin where our left value is going to be 0, because this is 0, which is going to be the center here. So this is 0.0. Our right value, or let's do our top next. So our top value is going to be negative 105, which is our position y. So I'll write negative 105. Then our size x is 655. That's going to be our right value. So we'll say our right is equal to 655. And then lastly, we have our bottom value, which is equal to 70. So I will write 70 here. And now we need to add our alignment, which is equal to 0.5, 0.5. We will say alignment is equal to a vector 2, where our x is equal to 0.5 and our y is equal to 0.5. Lastly, we need to add the size to content, which is false. So we will say size to content is equal to false. We also need to add a z order, which will be its layer. Or because this is our background bar, we will set this to 0. And then lastly, we need our widget, which is going to be our background bar here. This needs to be removed in L. I need to include spatial math. And here I need to capitalize the C. Just like that, we have our first canvas slot. Now we just need to do the exact same thing again, but for our progress bar. So I'm going to duplicate this, drag it on, except for because this is our progress bar, it needs to be scalable like this. But whenever we scale it like this, we only want to change one of these values. But you can see our position x and our size x are changing. That's because our position x is the center of our widget because of our alignments. So if we scale it, the center changes, so does the position. To fix this, we can actually change the alignment for the x. Now that this is 0 and 0.5, it's getting the position from here. That way, when we scale our progress bar, the position of it does not change, and only the size does. So let's put this right at the start here, where it'll sync up with our other bar, and put in these values. So back in our verse code, I'm just going to duplicate this right here and then highlight it and press Shift Tab to align it. I'm going to change the widget first to our progress bar widget. Here, the anchors are the same, except our alignment, we changed to the x value to 0.0. And then we also have new offsets. So our x is going to be negative 325. Our y is going to be negative 105, so that'll stay the same. Our right value is also going to stay the same. And then lastly, our size y, again, the same. So the only thing we'll need to change here is the left value, along with the alignment. Also the z order, because we want this on top of the background bar, we'll change this to 1. Okay, so now we have this that will create our UI with both of our widgets. We now need to add this UI to the player whenever this is called. So I'm going to say if player is equal to player agent, this is going to get the player from our agent. Normally these are interchangeable, but we're converting our agent to a player so that we can get the player's UI. So I'm now going to say player UI is equal to get player UI player. So now we have the player UI. We want to add our widget here. So we'll say player UI dot add widget. and we want to add this progress canvas. So just like that, it is now added. So the last thing that we need to do here is go down to this open UI, and here we want to make a new progress bar UI. So we will say new progress bar, and that's equal to a progress bar UI. And then for this new progress bar, we are going to initialize it, and we're going to do that for our agent. Okay, so here we're also missing these that we need. Okay, so let me just go ahead and test this out in game. So I'm just going to build verse code first, drag our verse device into the level, and we also need a button. So I'm going to search for a button and drag onto the play space. Here I'm just going to add a text called open progress bar, and then select it here. Now I'm going to launch session, and we will see what happens. So now in game, if I go over and press this button, you see we have the background bar and the progress bar, but it doesn't actually do anything. So let's fix that. Back in the code, under initialize, after the UI gets added to the player, I'm now going to make a new function that's going to move the progress bar. So I'm going to say move UI, and then I'm going to create this function here called move UI. It's not going to return anything. Under this, what we want to do is remove our progress bar widget, change the size, and then re-add it. Because this is going to happen in a loop, I'm actually going to make this a suspending function, and that means I'm going to have to do this whenever I call it. So under this, I'm going to make a var called the x value, and it's going to be a float. And now I'm going to make a loop that's going to sleep for 0.0 seconds, so as fast as it can possibly go. And in this loop, every single time, I'm going to set the x value plus equal to 1.0. After I set this value plus 1.0, we now need to remove the widget and re-add it. So to do this, we'll write progress canvas dot remove widget progress bar widget, and then we will also write progress canvas dot add widget, but here we have to make a canvas slot rather than just adding it. In this canvas slot, we are going to copy all of the information we have from our previous canvas slot where we added the progress bar. Just duplicate this here and just press shift tab once for that, except for our right value, which is going to be the size, is now going to be our x value instead of the 655. Also, this is the maximum size. So instead of starting the widget at the maximum size, we'll want this to start at nothing. So we'll change the right value or the size to 0. So now this will make our progress bar move. There's one thing that we also need first is before we remove the widget, to make it fluid, we need to first hide it by saying the progress bar dot set visibility, and then you set it to a widget visibility dot hidden. And right now, because it's hidden before we add it again, we need to make it visible like this. So here it'll hide the progress bar, then remove it, then it'll make it visible again and re-add it, except for our new x value that's been increased by 1. But we want this to end at some point. So we'll say after it adds to the value, if the x value is equal to our maximum, which is 655, then we are going to remove both of these. Let's copy this here. So this will remove our progress bar widget. And then I'm going to duplicate this again, except where we wanted to remove the background bar. And then we also want this to break. So what this will do is whenever the UI gets added, it will spawn this function that every single second or tick, it'll increase the x value, remove the widget. The x value is the size, so it'll increase the x size and remove the widget and then re-add it with the new size. And it'll also check if it is 655. And if it is, then it removes both of the widgets and breaks the loop. So let's test this out in game. So let me hit first build verse code and push changes. So now in game, whenever I add the bar, you'll see we have a progress bar, which is going very slowly. But if we wait, I'll do a little cut. So now as it reaches the end, it removes the widget entirely. And just like that, you have a progress bar, but I'm actually going to go ahead and add one more thing because that bar does nothing. And we also don't want the player to be moving around when the progress bar is on their screen. So there's a few things I want to do. The first is increase the speed because that was way too slow. We'll increase the amount that the size is increased every single tick. So I'm just going to change this to 4 so that it's faster. I also want to make the player get frozen so that they can't move when the progress bar is on their screen. So to do this, whenever we add the UI, we also want to get the Fortnite character so that we can use put in stasis, which freezes them. So in this if statement, I'm just going to add a comma and say the Fort character is equal to, you could do player or agent here, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to say agent dot get Fort character, and then you need brackets. If you're using this though, you need to use characters. So just add that here. And now whenever we add our widget, we're also going to say Fort character dot put in stasis args, and then here you can specify exactly what you want the player to do. So if we go to our stasis arguments, we can allow turning, allow falling, and allow emotes, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to have them all equal to false so that the player can't move at all. But we also need to release the player from stasis. So here, whenever we reach 655 and we remove the widgets, we also need to release the Fort character from stasis. So in this, I'll say the same thing that we did here. So Fort character is equal to agent dot get Fort character, except here we get an error because we don't have an agent anywhere in this function. So what we'll do is whenever we start this move UI function here, we're actually going to send it our agent, but because this is sending an agent to a function that doesn't take any agents in, we just need to receive an agent here by doing this. So now we'll send the agent and receive it here, which we can now use down here. And once we get the Fort character, we can say Fort character dot release from stasis, and this will unfreeze them. The very last thing I want to do is add a trigger device so that whenever the player reaches the final amount or the progress bar completes, they actually can get a reward. So what I'm going to do is add a trigger device here by I'm going to call a trigger, and I'm going to say it's equal to a trigger device. But this is a variable, non-editable, so what we'll need to do is go down here into our creative device and make an editable. This is going to be a trigger device. And then whenever we create this progress bar, which is going to be one of these, we want to set our trigger equal to our trigger here. And then the last thing we need to do is actually activate this trigger. So we'll say whenever the X value is 655, before the Fort character, I'm just going to say trigger.trigger, and then we're also going to trigger it for our agent. So with this, I'm going to go back to UEFN and build verse code. I'm going to get our trigger and place it down. Then I'm going to select it in our device. Now I'm going to push changes and see what happens. So now when we press this button, you'll see we cannot move. I cannot move at all, but we have a problem. Our progress bar continues going. So if we go back to our move UI function, the issue is that our X value is checking if it's equal to 655. And because we are increasing it by 4, because 4 does not divide evenly into 655, it's never going to exactly equal it. So the easy solution is, instead of checking if it's equal, we'll check if it's greater than or equal to. So now let's push changes. Also, a quick little tip is you can actually build your verse code from verse by clicking this, and then you can also push verse changes right next to it. Saves you a little bit of time and it's pretty handy. Push verse changes and see what it looks like in game. So now let's try this one more time. Our progress bar is going, we can't move. And then whenever it hits the end, it ends and our trigger triggers. And we can now move again. If you found this tutorial helpful and want to see more in the future, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. All of the code used in this video can be found in my community Discord, which will be the first link in the description below.